In the middle of a forgotten roadside, surrounded by silence and cold pavement, a tiny French bulldog puppy sat beside his injured mother, refusing to move. Passers-by came and went, but the little one didn't budge. He stayed, curled against her, guarding her fragile body with everything he had. Most thought he wouldn't survive the night, but what unfolded next is a story of loyalty, resilience, and the kind of bond that defies all odds. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. That helps us bring more real, inspiring stories like this one straight to you. The sun had barely risen over the quiet back road just outside Marietta, Georgia. It was the kind of morning where fog clung low to the earth, and everything seemed to move slower, except for the cars speeding past, oblivious to what lay just beyond the bend. Lying motionless on the gravel shoulder was a small French bulldog, her cream-colored fur matted with dirt, her side rising and falling in shallow breaths. She wasn't dead, but close, and nestled tightly against her broken body, barely the size of a loaf of bread, was her puppy. He couldn't have been more than 8 weeks old, too young to understand what had happened, old enough to feel that something wasn't right. His body trembled each time a car roared past, the wind whipping his ears back, the ground rumbling under his paws. But no matter the noise or the danger, he didn't move, not away from her. He pressed into her side, his tiny paws resting on her chest, as if trying to keep her heart beating with his presence alone. For hours, they remained there, invisible to most. A cyclist passed, slowed, looked, kept going. A delivery truck rumbled by, sending another gust of wind and gravel. The puppy didn't even flinch anymore. It was as if he'd accepted that this was where he needed to be, that if his mother couldn't get up, he would stay down with her. That was when Claire Harper drove by. She was already running late. Coffee spilled in her cup holder, voicemail blinking with missed calls, her GPS rerouting for the 3rd time. But just as she rounded the bend, her eyes caught something odd, a flash of pale fur, a movement too small to be a full-grown animal. She almost didn't stop. Almost. Her foot hit the brake instinctively, tires crunching on loose gravel. She reversed slowly, heart pounding for reasons she didn't quite understand yet. And then she saw them, the mother barely breathing, the puppy pressed into her like a heartbeat outside her body. His ears perked up when he saw her, but he didn't run, didn't bark, just stared with wide, silent eyes. Claire knelt down carefully. "Oh, sweet baby," she whispered, her voice cracking at the edges. She could see the bruises on the mother's ribs, the dried blood near her paw. Her breathing was shallow but steady. The puppy let out a soft, whimpering huff, but he didn't move. Claire reached for him gently. He growled, not out of aggression but from fear. It was the kind of sound that said, "Don't take me away from her." "I'm not little guy," she murmured, holding her hands out in surrender. "I'm here to help." It took time, minutes that felt like hours, but eventually the puppy let her touch his head. When she lifted his mother carefully into the back seat of her SUV, he followed. No leash, no hesitation. He jumped in after her like a soldier on a mission. At the nearest vet clinic, the staff sprang into action. The mother, soon identified as Luna by the tag on her cracked collar, was rushed in for emergency care. The puppy sat quietly in the waiting room, head resting on the cold tile floor, eyes fixed on the door his mother had disappeared behind. Claire sat next to him. "You're brave, you know that?" He didn't react. Not yet. But something had already shifted. She felt it. When the vet finally emerged, her face was serious. "She's alive," she said. "Barely. But your timing. It saved her." Claire looked down at the puppy. "No," she whispered. He did. Outside, the fog had lifted. The sun had broken through, warming the world just a little. But inside that small clinic, something far more powerful had taken root. The beginning of a story not about rescue, but about devotion. A puppy too young to understand fear, yet somehow full of the kind of love most people spend a lifetime chasing. And he had just refused to leave it behind. The veterinary clinic was quiet the next morning. Just the faint hum of overhead lights, the occasional bark from a back kennel, and the soft shuffle of nurses starting their shift. Claire had barely slept. She sat curled in a worn chair in the corner of the waiting room, still wearing the same hoodie from the night before. Her coffee had gone cold in her hands, but she didn't care. Her eyes stayed locked on the hallway that led to the treatment rooms. At her feet, the tiny French Bulldog puppy lay curled on a fleece blanket the receptionist had given him. He hadn't left that spot since Luna was taken into emergency care. Not even once. Occasionally, he would raise his head if he heard the distant sound of metal tools or soft footsteps. Then he'd lower it again, disappointed, silent. The bond was unlike anything Claire had ever seen. Around 7:30 a.m., Dr. Patel stepped into the waiting area, clipboard in hand. She gave Claire a tired smile. "She made it through the night," the vet said gently. "Still critical but stable." Claire exhaled sharply, placing a hand over her heart. The little puppy looked up at her, as if sensing the change in tone. "She has several fractured ribs," Dr. Patel continued, "and a concussion from blunt force trauma. We think she was hit by a vehicle. But she's strong." Claire nodded slowly. "And the puppy?" The vet crouched down to meet him eye to eye. He stared back without blinking. "He's not just healthy, he's remarkable. Refused to eat unless he could smell her nearby. We gave him a towel she had laid on, and only then did he relax." Claire ran her fingers through her tangled hair. "He wouldn't leave her side out there. Not for anything." The vet smiled softly. "Dogs like him, they don't come around often." Claire glanced down at the puppy, who now sat upright, ears twitching slightly. "Do you have a name for him?" Dr. Patel asked. Claire paused. She hadn't planned to get involved this deeply. She wasn't even supposed to be on this road yesterday. But something about this puppy, his silence, his bravery, his eyes, had hooked itself deep inside her. She looked back at him. "How about Hero?" she whispered. The puppy tilted his head slightly, as if he understood. "Hero," Dr. Patel repeated with a nod. "Fits him perfectly." Claire decided to stay in town while Luna recovered. The clinic set up a small playpen in the corner of the waiting room just for Hero. He became a quiet fixture, always watching, never disruptive. People came and went. He stayed. And every evening, Claire would visit Luna in the recovery ward. Hero would press his paws against the glass door, eyes never leaving her form, tail wagging slowly. The staff began to talk about it. The bond. The loyalty. The story that had started on the side of a cold road and now lived in every hallway of the clinic. A nurse brought him toys. He ignored them. Another offered a different blanket. He dragged the old one back into his spot. Claire bought him a collar, navy blue with a silver tag that read, "Hero, I stay." But not everyone saw Hero the same way. On the third day, an older man in a suit entered the clinic. His name was Don Trainer, and he claimed to be Luna's original owner. "She was stolen out of my backyard last summer," he said bluntly, holding up an old photo of Luna. "Looks like someone dumped her when they couldn't sell her." Claire felt a chill crawl up her spine. "She's chipped," the vet confirmed. "It matches the information on file. So I'll take her and the pup now," Don said. "They're mine." Claire looked down at Hero, who had already pressed himself closer to her legs. "He's not chipped," Dr. Patel interjected. "He wasn't even born yet when she went missing." Don shrugged. "Still mine. She's the mother. That makes him mine too." Claire clenched her fists. "Do you even know his name?" Don scoffed. "It's a dog." The vet stepped in before the tension escalated. "We'll have to verify custody through proper procedures. You'll be contacted soon." Don muttered something under his breath and left without looking back. Claire looked down at Hero. His body trembled, not with fear, but with something else. Like he knew, like he remembered. And as she picked him up and held him close, she whispered, "I'm not letting anyone take you away." But deep down, she knew this wasn't over. 3 days had passed since Don Trainer stormed into the clinic claiming ownership of Luna and her puppy. And while things had quieted on the surface, The tension lingered in the air like a storm waiting to break. Claire couldn't stop thinking about it. Something about that man didn't sit right with her. His sharp tone. The way he looked at Hero like he was just an object. Not once had he called Luna by name. Not once had he knelt to greet the puppy. There was no recognition. No warmth. It haunted her. Hero, however, remained the same, loyal and still. He barely left Claire's side. And whenever they entered the recovery ward to visit Luna, he became a different pup entirely. Tail wagging gently, ears perked, eyes wide and full of light. He would press his tiny nose to the glass of her kennel and wait, just like he did on that cold morning by the roadside. Luna, now gaining strength slowly, would lift her head and give a soft wag in return. The bond hadn't faded. If anything, it had deepened. Back at home, Claire sat at her kitchen table, reading through every adoption guideline and rescue regulation she could find. She wasn't sure what she was looking for. A loophole? A way to keep Hero. Legally, she wasn't his owner. Not yet, but in her heart she already was. That night, as Hero lay curled up beside her on the couch, she noticed something she hadn't before. There was stitching on the underside of Luna's old collar, the one they had removed at the clinic. She reached for it, turning it over gently beneath the lamplight. The words were faint, sewn in faded thread, barely visible after all the wear and dirt. But they were there. If you find her, she's yours. Please love her like we did. Claire stared at the message for a long time. Her heart pounded in her chest. It wasn't from Dawn. It was from someone else. Someone who had once loved Luna enough to let her go with dignity. Someone who had expected kindness from the world. And someone who had clearly never imagined she'd end up in the hands of someone like him. The next morning, Claire brought the collar to Dr. Patel. The vet's eyebrows lifted as she read the stitched message. Whoever wrote this didn't just lose a dog, she said quietly. They were saying goodbye. Claire nodded. I don't think Don was her owner. I think he's lying. Patel leaned back. It's possible. Sometimes, when breeds like French bulldogs are found injured, people try to claim them just to sell them. It's rare, but it happens. Claire felt sick. She was stolen, she whispered. And he wants to profit from her again. Dr. Patel's face hardened. I'll contact the shelter database. See if there's a record of her ever being adopted out or flagged as missing. And I'll reach out to animal control. Maybe they'll have more. Meanwhile, Hero's devotion never wavered. Every day, he would sit by the glass door of Luna's kennel. He wouldn't play with toys. Wouldn't eat unless Claire hand-fed him. Wouldn't sleep unless he was near her scent. One evening, just as Claire was about to leave, Luna struggled to her feet inside the kennel. It was the first time she'd stood on her own since the accident. Hero barked just once. A soft, hopeful yelp. His stubby tail wagged furiously. Luna limped toward the door, her eyes never leaving him. The vet techs gasped softly, grabbing their phones to capture the moment. Even Dr. Patel came rushing in, tears in her eyes. It's him, she said. He's her reason. But the happiness was short-lived. That same night, Claire received an email from a local attorney. Don had filed a petition for custody of both dogs. He was demanding their return. Claire's hands trembled as she read the message. Hero looked up at her, sensing the shift. He climbed into her lap, nuzzling into her chest. You're not going anywhere, she whispered into his fur. I swear to you. But inside, doubt crept in. Because she knew this wasn't just about loyalty anymore. Now it was a fight. A fight to protect a bond the world might not understand. A fight to keep Hero from falling into the wrong hands. And as Claire held him tighter, she made herself a silent promise. She wouldn't let him down. Not after everything he'd already survived. The courtroom felt too quiet for Claire. Too polished. Too cold. She sat near the front, her palms damp, heart pounding behind her ribs like a drum in a marching band. Hero rested inside a small carrier beneath her seat, unaware of the storm unfolding above him. It had been a week since Don Traynor filed for legal custody of both Luna and Hero. Since then, Claire had done everything she could. Called shelters, spoken with attorneys, emailed photos of the stitched message on Luna's old collar. But the truth was simple. She was just one woman. And Don? He had money, a polished lawyer, and an empty claim. Still, she was not going to back down. The judge, a calm-faced woman named Judge Ramirez, flipped through papers as both sides presented their case. Don sat with his lawyer, arms folded, lips pressed into a smug smirk. "I had that dog for years," he said. "She was stolen. I've got vet bills and photographs to prove she's mine." Claire's lawyer stood. "And yet, Your Honor, he never reported her stolen. No police report, no microchip update, and no contact with local shelters. What responsible owner does that?" Don leaned forward. "She's mine. I shouldn't have to explain myself." Judge Ramirez raised a brow but said nothing. Then Claire was called to the stand. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, clutching the collar in her hand. "I didn't rescue Luna because I wanted something," she began, her voice shaking. "I found her nearly dead on the side of a road. Her puppy, Hero, was sitting beside her, refusing to leave." She held up the collar, showing the faint, hand-stitched words. "If you find her, she's yours. Please love her like we did." Claire's eyes flicked toward Don. "I don't think this man ever stitched those words. I don't think he cared what happened to her. But that puppy, he did. And he still does." She stepped down slowly, her heart racing, unsure if it would matter. Later that evening, back at home, Claire sat on the living room floor while Hero curled into her lap. She stroked his back gently, whispering soft promises into the quiet room. Outside, rain tapped against the windows. Inside, everything felt fragile. Until the phone rang. It was Dr. Patel. "I think we found something," she said, her voice electric. "A rescue group across state lines. They had Luna. She was adopted to a family in South Carolina 2 years ago, under a different name." Claire's breath caught. "Then how did she end up here?" "She went missing a few months ago. They thought she was lost forever. But their records match her markings, her vet visits, even the collar message." Claire sat up straighter. "Can they testify?" "They're willing to. They loved her." Claire looked down at Hero, now asleep, his head resting on her arm. This fight wasn't just hers anymore. She had allies, and now, finally, she had proof. The next day, Claire submitted the new evidence to the court. Statements, adoption records, and the contact information of Luna's previous family. Don's confidence cracked for the first time when he heard the words, "New evidence has been presented." Claire watched his jaw tighten. His eyes narrowed at her like daggers. But she didn't care. She had the truth on her side now, and something even stronger, Hero's trust. But just as things were starting to look hopeful, another twist came. That evening, when Claire returned to the clinic for her usual visit with Luna, the front desk staff looked uneasy. "She's gone," they said. Claire blinked. "Gone. Taken. We think someone broke in." The cameras were disabled, but her kennel was empty. The back door was unlocked. "And there's no sign of her." Claire staggered back in shock. Hero, still leashed at her side, started to whimper. He tugged toward the hallway, ears alert, tail stiff. "She was fine this morning," the vet tech whispered. "She was walking again, making real progress." Claire's knees nearly buckled. "No, no, no, no." She dropped to the floor, pulling Hero into her arms as his cries grew louder. High-pitched, panicked sounds she hadn't heard from him since the day she found him. Someone had taken Luna, and Claire had a terrible feeling about who. The clinic was filled with silence. Too much of it. Claire stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't believe what she'd just heard. Luna was gone, stolen, just days away from full recovery, and now vanished without a trace. Hero's tiny whimpers broke the silence as he paced in frantic circles around the door that once led to his mother's kennel. His nose pressed against the tile floor, sniffing desperately for a trail that no longer existed. Claire crouched to scoop him up. He trembled in her arms, ears pinned back, eyes wide. Dr. Patel came rushing in from the back room, holding her cell phone. "I checked the surveillance backup," she said, breathless. The cameras were definitely disabled from inside. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. Claire closed her eyes, fighting the burning in her throat. It was him, she whispered. It had to be Don. Dr. Patel nodded. We've already called the police. A report's been filed. But Claire knew that might not be enough. Luna was out there, hurt, vulnerable, and now possibly in the hands of the man who only wanted her for profit. And time was running out. The next morning, Claire woke to dozens of missed messages and calls. She had posted about Luna's disappearance on every local forum, Facebook group, and dog rescue page she could find. Her post had gone viral overnight. Missing, recently rescued French Bulldog, was recovering at downtown clinic after near-fatal injuries. Stolen from vet facility. Her puppy is devastated. Please help us bring her home. One comment stood out. It was a blurry photo, taken outside a gas station 40 miles away. A gray sedan. In the back seat, barely visible, was a dog crate. Inside it, what looked like a small, hunched silhouette of a French bulldog. The photo had no caption, just a timestamp. Claire's hands shook as she forwarded the image to the police. I'm going after her, she told Dr. Patel. I can't just sit here. Be careful, the vet warned. People who steal dogs, they don't always have a conscience. Claire grabbed Hero's leash, his small body already tugging toward the door, as if he knew the chase was back on. The drive was tense. Highway lanes blurred past as Claire gripped the steering wheel, heart racing. Hero stood with his front paws on the dashboard, eyes locked ahead, ears twitching. They stopped at the gas station in the photo. It was quiet, dusty. A few truckers. A sleepy clerk inside. Claire showed the image. Yeah, the clerk nodded. That guy was here yesterday. Had a dog in the back. Kept yelling at it to shut up. Claire's stomach turned. Do you know where he went? He shrugged. Said he was headed to a property he rents north of here. Somewhere near Millfield. Millfield, a rural patch of land mostly forgotten with barely a signal on most phones. But it was something. Claire drove fast. The sun dipped behind the hills, casting orange light across winding roads. Hero stayed alert, nose pressed to the window, tail wagging nervously. They reached a dirt driveway blocked by a rusted gate. On the other side, a rundown cabin, one dim light glowing inside, and parked beside it, the same gray sedan. Claire's breath caught. I need to call the police first, she whispered, fingers fumbling for her phone. No signal. Her stomach dropped. Then, from the trees, a sound, faint, high-pitched. A whine. Hero perked up. Another whine. Claire turned slowly toward the side of the cabin. Her eyes widened. There, behind a chain-link fence, barely visible in the fading light, was Luna. She was standing, weak, limping, but alive. She saw them and barked. Hero lunged against the window, yelping with joy. Claire's heart surged with emotion. But the moment was shattered by a voice from the porch. Well, isn't this a surprise? Don stood in the shadows, arms crossed. I thought you'd come looking. Claire stepped out slowly, clutching Hero close to her chest. You need to let her go, she said, voice steady. She's mine, Don snapped. The court hasn't ruled yet, has it? She's not a possession, Claire said, stepping closer. She's a soul, and she doesn't want to be with you. Don's expression darkened. You think anyone's going to believe a dog over me? She doesn't have to speak, Claire said. She already told the world. Everyone saw that photo. Everyone knows what you did. Hero growled softly in her arms. Don hesitated. For a moment it looked like he might explode. Might grab her, might call her bluff. But then headlights swept across the clearing. A siren blared. Police vehicles pulled into the dirt drive. Officers jumped out with flashlights and firm voices. Step away from the woman. Now! Claire held Hero tight as Dawn was surrounded, handcuffed, and led away without a word. An officer approached her. Ma'am, are you all right? She nodded slowly, eyes locked on Luna, who was now pressing her face against the fence. Please, Claire whispered. "Let her out." The officer opened the gate. Luna limped forward, and Hero leapt from Claire's arms. They met in the grass, noses nuzzling, tails wagging, bodies pressed tightly together. They hadn't seen each other in days. But in that moment, it was like no time had passed. Luna's fur was thinner now, her once bright eyes dulled slightly by exhaustion. But the moment she stepped out of that kennel fence and into the moonlit grass, she looked like a soul reborn. Hero whined and circled her, tail wagging in a frantic rhythm, licking her face as if to be sure she was real. Luna responded with a soft grunt, resting her head on his neck. They stood there like statues in the dark, two French bulldogs whose bond had withstood abandonment, injury, and even theft. Claire knelt beside them, tears finally escaping as she gently embraced them both. "You're safe," she whispered. "You're both safe now." The officer who'd released Luna approached with a small smile. "We'll need you to come in for a full statement tomorrow. But for tonight, take them home." Claire nodded, cradling Hero in one arm as Luna limped slowly beside them. It was a long, quiet drive back. No words, just the soft breaths of the dogs, the rhythmic hum of the tires, and the weight of everything they'd all survived. At home, the apartment felt warmer than ever before. Claire laid out clean blankets, heated some soft food, and filled bowls with fresh water. Hero refused to leave Luna's side even for a second, curling against her as she lay down on the living room rug, eyes heavy but content. Claire sat close, watching them breathe in sync. She gently placed the old collar, the one with the stitched words, next to Luna. It was faded now, but still legible. "If you find her, she's yours. Please love her like we did." She ran her fingers across the message, a strange mix of sadness and peace washing over her. Someone years ago had loved Luna deeply, enough to send her into the world with a final plea stitched by hand. And now, somehow, that wish had found its way to her. The next morning, Hero was the first to wake. He pawed at Claire's leg gently, urging her up before trotting to the kitchen where Luna stood, already stronger, her tail twitching as she looked at the door. Claire opened it. For the first time since Luna had returned, she stepped outside under the rising sun. Her legs wobbled slightly, but she held herself up, sniffing the air with new energy. Hero followed close behind, alert and proud. The world was still full of noise, full of traffic and strangers and unpredictability. But today, it didn't feel so threatening. Claire grabbed her phone and snapped a photo. The two of them, side by side on the small porch, sunlight spilling across their backs. She posted it with a simple caption, "Together again, forever this time." Later that week, the courtroom looked different. Not because the walls had changed or the judge wore anything new, but because Claire wasn't alone this time. The courtroom benches were filled with people from local shelters, volunteers from French Bulldog rescue groups, and even Luna's original foster family from South Carolina, who had driven up just to testify. Don Traynor sat in silence, no lawyer beside him this time, no smug smile. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage, witnesses, a viral post with over 200,000 shares and growing. The judge reviewed everything. Then she looked at Claire. "This court sees no valid claim from Mr. Traynor and officially recognizes Claire Monroe as the legal guardian of both Hero and Luna." Claire exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. Outside, people clapped. Someone offered her flowers. Another woman sobbed while hugging her, whispering, "Thank you for fighting." Hero barked once, loud and joyful. Luna, calm as ever, stood quietly at Claire's feet, tail wagging gently. This was their victory. All of them. That night, Claire lit a single candle on the kitchen table. Not for a birthday, not for a holiday, but as a quiet ceremony of gratitude. She sat cross-legged on the rug as Hero nuzzled into her lap and Luna lay beside her, chest rising and falling slowly. "Everything we've been through," Claire whispered, stroking their heads. "We survived it all. But more than that, they'd healed. Together." Months had passed since the cold night by the roadside. Winter had faded into spring, and with it, the shadows of pain had slowly melted into something gentler, something healing. Claire's apartment had changed too. There were now chew toys scattered across the living room, a soft blanket permanently draped over the couch where Luna loved to nap, and a small nameplate by the front door that read, "Home of Claire, Hero, and Luna." The once shy French Bulldog puppy had grown into a bold, playful companion, full of energy and affection. Hero had become the heartbeat of the home, always the first to greet Claire in the morning, and the last to fall asleep curled beside her. Luna, though still bearing the physical reminders of her trauma, a slight limp, a scar along her hind leg, had grown stronger each day. Her coat had returned to its full shine, her eyes brighter, filled with a quiet confidence that only comes from surviving the worst and still choosing to trust. One afternoon, Claire took them to a nearby park, one she'd avoided for months, the same park where she had first seen the two of them lying in the grass, broken and alone. This time, the scene was different. Hero sprinted across the open field, ears flopping, tail a blur of joy. Luna followed at a slower pace, but with pride in every step. The two of them ran circles around Claire as she laughed, tears forming in her eyes. Not of sadness, but gratitude. Several passers-by stopped to admire the dogs. "They're beautiful," one woman said, kneeling to pet Luna. "Are they rescues?" Claire smiled. "In more ways than one." Later that week, Claire received a letter in the mail, official documentation confirming Luna's full ownership. It came with a handwritten note from the rescue agency's director. "Few people would have done what you did. Thank you for reminding us all why we fight for dogs like her." Claire pinned it to the bulletin board in her kitchen, just below a framed photo of Hero curled beside Luna on their first night home. She stared at it for a long moment, the weight of their journey sinking in. They had been through abandonment, pain, fear, and injustice, but they had never let go of each other. Even when the world seemed set against them, that bond had held strong. It had carried them here. One evening, as the sky turned orange and the air grew soft, Claire settled into the porch swing outside with a book in her lap. Hero climbed up beside her, laying his head on her thigh, while Luna rested at her feet, blinking slowly as the breeze passed. Claire closed the book. The words didn't matter. Not tonight. She looked at them and whispered, "You saved each other, and you saved me too." They didn't need to understand the words. They already knew. Love like that doesn't need explaining. As the stars blinked awake above them, Claire, Hero, and Luna sat in silence. Three survivors bound by fate, resilience, and the kind of love that grows quietly through pain. Their story wasn't built on miracles or fantasy. It was built on loyalty, on courage. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect. Sometimes, the smallest creatures show us the truest form of devotion. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share this story with someone who believes in second chances. Together, let's keep spreading messages of hope, healing, and the incredible bond between humans and the dogs who never stop loving them. Thank you for watching, and on choosing every day to keep moving forward together.